I know your first work with Joe Kelly was doing the Juggernaut one shot.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's where Joe and I met. Joe and I met on the Juggernaut. I read the script. By that time, I guess I was a regular. I had been working at Marvel for about 2 years or a year and a half or something. And that script came across the table, and I was like, I gotta call this guy. Sometimes I never talked to the writers, only through the editors, some of this stuff. And I called him up and I just said, "This is hilarious. You're great. Well, let's start talking about stuff." So we just hit up an immediate friendship.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And around the same time, locally, a friend of mine, James Robinson, I had made friends with James, and he's the one who actually told me about the pro cons and stuff like that. And we would go up there and hang out. But through him, a mutual friend, I met Steve Siegel.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't start working with Steve until Alpha Flight. This is a funny story, I suppose. Okay, well, I'll tell it. But so Joe had gotten Deadpool. Deadpool was not Deadpool at this time.
Yeah.
Joe Kelly made, as far as I'm concerned, made Deadpool what Deadpool is. But, he was obviously, he was enough of a character that they were going to try out his own issue, give him his own title. So the Fabian and
Rob had created him.
created him and created enough of a buzz for those guys, for him to be able to give it a chance at a book line. And what Joe brought was all of the backstory, of Blind Al and everything. He had started that book. It was like one issue in, and Ed McGuinness, who really made his name also on that book, is a great artist. At that time, Ed was, let's just say, he wasn't moving at a quick enough pace.
Yeah, as happens.
It was making people nervous. And Joe had said, "Would you please take over the Deadpool book?" Because he was worried. This was his first big shot, and he wanted to make sure it came out monthly and all of those things. But at the same time, Steve had Alpha Flight going, and Scott McDaniel had already done 10 issues, but he was also having deadline troubles. And Steve was like, "Could you please take over Alpha Flight?" So I had to choose between Deadpool and Alpha Flight. I didn't know much about Deadpool, and I knew Alpha Flight from the X-Men books.
They're both legendary runs because Big Hero 6 came from Alpha Flight. So
well, that's right. So I chose Alpha Flight, and as we were, as Steve and I were kind of like going on with ideas, he had Sunfire, who he was just kind of like torturing over at Department H, just to show Department H was kind of a nasty place to be at. And I asked him, what are the plans with, because I always liked Sunfire, who was introduced in the Defenders Avengers run to me.
Just right when you started reading comics.
Yes, that's exactly right. He and Captain America and the Submariner were all fighting over it. So it was kind of a call back to a World War II time, the invaders fighting with Sunfire, and he was like, "Listen, I'm not letting you have this thing. It's Japan's kind of thing." But anyways, I loved all those characters. I thought they were all so great. And so when Sunfire was there, I was like, "Well, you know what we should do is we should introduce a team just like Alpha Flight was introduced in the X-Men books. Like, who are these guys? Well, let's introduce a Japanese superhero team that come in to rescue the prince, the sovereign prince, and that's how Sunfire and Big Hero 6 got created. As we started talking about that stuff, and we came up with them during that run. That was actually a lot of fun, that run. One of the big things that or has happened, is create our own stuff. Marvel's been doing a great job lately of taking their titles and maybe reworking them and thinking about them for a newer audience and how to bring in a wider readership and stuff like that. But in the 90s, you had a schism. You had people who were wanting to create stuff, and Image had just pretty much,
Boom was happening.
the boom was happening. So the idea of creating new content for the big two was almost you didn't think about it.
Yeah, no one would want to do that because if you have a good idea and you can keep it for yourself, you can do it, you can own it, and you can
Right.
create it down the line.
Right. I kind of felt like Marvel. I owed that company something because it had sustained me as a kid in
Yeah.
a way that was very important, and I wasn't interested in just kind of retelling other older stories. I wanted to add to canons. I wanted to add characters, and you'll even see in the X Factor run, we're introducing a lot of new characters with Howard Mackey. I just to me, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to add new stuff. So that was something also when Steve and I were working together. I said, I want to add new characters. I don't want to just
Retell the same old stories over and over again.
right.
I want to start creating people and have them hopefully influence the next generation.
Yeah, exactly.